everybody, welcome to my first video. In this first video, I'm actually going to start from the very basics of graphic design. I'm going to show you an app that I use all the time. It's actually the app that I live in, and it's Adobe Illustrator. So I'm actually going to just take you through and kind of give you the lay of the land for that software. It's what I use for the bulk of my logo design, my t-shirt design, apparel design, and other fun graphics. So first we're going to open it up. So coming down here, I'm just going to open up Illustrator. But to get started, you're simply going to come over to the left hand side and click Create New. And once you do that, you then have this panel that'll pop up, and essentially this is where you will set the foundation for your project. So first of all, we have several different options to choose from. Here at the top, we actually have templates that Illustrator provides. So you have mobile templates. So if you're designing for, let's say, a layout on the phone or something that you want to be specifically sized to fit, an Apple product or what have you, you have all these presets here that you can choose from. And then you also have web templates and presets, print, film and video, and then art and illustration. So in this case, I'm just going to come back over to my recently used formats, and I'm going to just click here on this first one here. It is a print formatted artboard with a 1500 by 1500 pixel. You can change all those settings here on the right hand side. And so 1500 by 1500 is a pretty decent sized square that I work with when I'm designing certain things. Down here you can also see the color mode. You can choose which color mode you want to have the project be in before you even start. RGB being red, green, blue. That's usually what you're going to choose if you're working for something that is digital art, something that's going to be made for a screen. And then CMYK, which is cayenne, magenta, yellow, and black, or key. That's what you're going to want to choose if you're designing something that's going to be printed. And because I have a print pre-selected here, that's why it's actually making it the CMYK color mode. But if I switch over to the mobile here, you'll see that color mode will automatically switch for me. And of course, you can change the size and the dimensions of your artboard here. And you'll see if you do that, it'll automatically change the orientation. But of course, you can set the orientation, and you'll see those dimensions will swap there. But I'm just going to set this back to 1500. Press Enter. And then we'll go ahead and click Create. So once we click Create, our artboard will load up here, and you'll kind of see some of the basics of the layout here in Illustrator. So starting out, first of all, one of the things that I think is important to notice is the top toolbar here. This is where a lot of your different settings and changes are going to be made throughout your project. And then on the left-hand side here, these are all the tools that you can use throughout Illustrator. You have your selection tool, your direct selection tool, magic wand tool, your text, your shape tool, shape builder tool. Any tool that has a small little triangle in the corner there, you can click and hold, and it'll expand the options out for you. And of course, we'll dig into a lot of these later on to show you what those can do. But for example, if I click on the rectangle tool and hold, you'll see it'll open up to the other shapes that are available for me to use here. And then there's a bunch more tools here for you as well. On the right hand side, you have a lot of different panels used for various reasons throughout working on your projects as well. So right now I have it collapsed, but I can expand this out, and you'll see I can kind of click through, and you'll see the different options here. You can also click and drag and kind of stack these as well. So if you wanted some to kind of be on the same panel, you can do that. And then of course you can always just click and drag and put it back in place up here with the others. So there's a lot of customization that you can do throughout the panels and the tools, but we won't get into that just yet. So With that being said, what we're looking at here is your artboard. Your artboard is essentially the space that you can use to create and to design. You can design outside of the artboard. This is just the gray area. Just letting you know that like this is outside of the the space that you designated to design in. So, for example, if I wanted to have a square, I can draw. You'll notice that it's white and it has a black border or stroke. That is defaulted for any new project that you start. All of your shapes and drawings will, objects will have a white fill with a black stroke. You can change that by coming up to the top menu here or over to the left hand side. And so let's say if I wanted to have a blue stroke on this particular object, you can't really see that well. Let's zoom in. Actually, let's increase the size of that stroke, and then you can see that a lot clearer. Like I said, you can design outside of the artboard if you want. It is an option. There's no really um, negative effect to going outside the artboard, but except for when you're ready to export and whatnot, you definitely want it to be within the artboard. But again, you can definitely go outside it if need be. And so that is just a little bit about the perimeter and the setting of the artboard itself. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the shape tool. So you just saw that I use the square. Let's actually delete this and I'll show you a little bit more about the shape tool and how it can build things out. So I'm actually going to click hold and I'm going to go ahead and click on the ellipse tool. The ellipse tool allows you to draw not just ellipses but also circles. So if I click and drag, that's when it starts creating for me. And so if I wanted this to be a perfect circle, I can actually hold shift and hold shift while still clicking and dragging, and you'll see you're able to actually make a perfect circle. And of course, if I wanted to duplicate this, I could do that as well. One shortcut to doing this is by holding Option, clicking on the object, and dragging, and that will duplicate it for you. Or, of course, you can always do the classic Command C, Command V, that's copy and paste. You can also do Command C for copy, Command F for forward. So forward, pasting it forward, and what does that mean? That essentially means you're pasting that object on top of itself. So I'm going to change the border here to red so you can see that I pasted it on top of itself. And so I can also do Command C for copy, Command B for back paste, and it's a little, it's a little harder to demonstrate this one, but you did indeed paste the object behind itself. So those are just a few tricks for copying certain items and objects in your artboard here. So we talked a little bit about shapes. We'll dig into a lot of those later on, I'm sure. But now I want to talk color. I just demonstrated here how you can change the color of the stroke of an object. Now let's talk about the fill. So obviously you can just click down and you can choose which color you want to fill the object with. You can also, if you want to click back over to the stroke here, if you want to get rid of that, you have this, in the first box here, you have the red line through it, and that's basically, none. So you can click that and it gets rid of it for you. So we have several different options when it comes to filling in an object. You have your standard colors here that are usually defaulted when you open up an Illustrator document. You also have a library of different colors. You have your swatch library here. If you click on that, you then have a whole host of different colors you can choose from. And a lot of these are very basic, a lot of them are funky, but they're fun to play around with. For example, they have one labeled foods and ice cream. I can click on that and it opens up a different color panel here, and you can always move and drag things where you need it kind of out of the way. You can expand this even. And so, you have here, and if you use the trick like I showed you earlier, just by holding Option and dragging, you can duplicate it. And do it one more time. and you got a Neapolitan situation going on here. If you have a specific color that you want to use, whether you have a Pantone or a hex code that you want to change this object to, you can do that as well. So you can do that by coming over to your color panel. If that is not showing for you, you would just simply come over to Window and go down to Color and make sure that's checked. And then you can adjust the red, green, and blue attributes, or you can input a hex code here. Or you can even use the cool color picker and play around with it, and you can obviously have endless possibilities there. Looking at the color picker, the higher you are, the lighter the color, the lower you are, the darker the color, and of course you can kind of see how that spectrum works across the board. Pretty self-explanatory there. So once you have a color that you want, you then move on to the next object or to the next step in the project, but that's a little bit about color. Now I want to talk about brushes. I'm first going to come over here to my brush tool. It's a shortcut B. Right now it's defaulted to a 3-point round stroke. So if I start drawing with my brush, you can see that it will, follow the line that I'm creating, and it will do it in that 3-point round stroke. Now you can select by clicking V. That's the shortcut to your selection tool, and you can select these strokes that you just did, and you can increase the size or decrease the size. You can also change the color up here or over here on the right hand side like you did before. But first you are going to want to toggle the stroke, and then you can change the color. It's usually defaulted to the fill, and if I was to select a color for the fill, you'll see it'll try to fill in the open space of the stroke, but we don't want that. So we can just get rid of that. And a quick way to get rid of any small mistake is by doing Command Z. So Command Z is undo. So that is the basics. Those are the basics of both the shape tool and the brush tool. The last thing I'm going to cover here in this video is the text tool. So actually let's get rid of this shape. Let's come over here to our text tool. Your shortcut is just pressing T on your keyboard. You can then just click anywhere and start typing. Alright, once you start typing, you'll see it will default. Let's go over here to our properties. If your properties panel is not showing, come over here to Windows, come down to properties, make sure that's clicked, because that's going to be very helpful. I use this panel quite a lot in every project that I work on. So once you type your word or phrase, you then can just select your text. And of course we want to size this up. There are several ways to do that. One of the ways to do that is by just increasing the size of your text over here in your properties panel. Another way to do that is by simply hovering over and dragging it, but you can see that it kind of skews it as I'm resizing it. So one way to fix that is to hold Shift and then drag, and it keeps it proportionate to its size without stretching. And you'll see that over here in the properties panel, the size of the text went up, astronomically there when I expanded it out. The default color for text is black. Of course, you can always change the color of your text, no problem. And with the text selected, you can also change the font. And one of the great things about Illustrator and all the Adobe softwares these days is that it actually gives you a preview, and it previews the different text for you as you're going to select it. And these are all the different typefaces and fonts that I have. That is how you place text in a Illustrator document. That is how you change the color of text and the size of text. There's a bunch of different things that you can do with text, but we'll be covering that at a later time. That pretty much wraps up the basic overview of the Illustrator artboard and the overview of some of the most basic tools of Illustrator. We're going to be digging a lot more into these things, but I just wanted to give you all a little introduction just to give you just a taste of what it's like opening up a document, creating a document, and getting started with some basic tools. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something here. Feel free to give me a comment down below of anything that you may be interested in learning next. As always, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.